Hi, Sir Franco. Hindi ka pa
Sir Franco na audio.
Yeah, there it is.
Di ba?
Hello!
Okay. Okay, so teachers na magandang araw po at hapon sa ating lahat, no. And hopefully teachers, nakapag-lunch na po tayo, no. And welcome sa bagong schedule natin sa Kaagapay Teacher Support. At alam ko po na medyo bagong schedule na to, bagong adjustment kasi for the longest time we have been doing our webinars 10 a.m. every Saturday. Okay? Sir Jambi,
Yeah.
i-welcome natin, okay? Kasi ito yung kanyang official first webinar with Kaagapay
Kinilig
Teachers.
ako kompleto tayo bigla dun sa sa gilid.
Yes.
Sir Franco, i-welcome po natin for her very first solo.
Solo, yeah.
Yes, solo webinar, no. Yes po. Yeah, actually dumaan lang po kami, no, actually today, para lang mag-hi po sa inyong lahat, no. Pero after po nito talaga, iwanan na po namin si Teacher Pao with you. And hopefully po teachers, ingatan niyo po si Teacher Pao, no. It's her first time. Yun, so welcome Teacher Pao, no, to
Hello, Teacher Pao.
Yes,
Hello, good
power,
afternoon,
no.
everyone.
Sir Jabe, ano nga yung hashtag natin? Hashtag power.
Hashtag
Power.
Power talaga, no? It's a really power for ano. So good afternoon Teacher Pao, and welcome to Kaagapay Teacher Support na as our co-administrator. So looking forward to all the great things we'll be working together dito sa Kaagapay Teacher Support. Yan. So Sir Jambi and Sir Jello, okay? For today, we have a very very special, no? It's a very special. Okay? This is
Gusto natin yung Tagalog natin ngayon.
Yes, okay, yes. Practice na kagad yan, syempre. Kailangan natin mag-warm up for later, no? Okay? So teachers, no, for today, as you already could see, no, sa ating introduction kanina sa title natin, okay? We'll be having design thinking, no, teaching in the 21st, teaching and learning in the 21st century, okay? So, Sir Jello, ideas, no? Ano ba tong expect natin today sa session natin for on design thinking? At bakit nga ba design thinking? Ano? Bakit para saan to?
Sir Franco, I think isa sa mga magandang framework, especially when we design certain things, when we plan on certain things, to have this principle of the design thinking. So, I'm very excited with this. Sorry, nag-i-English na para ma-practice. Sorry. I'm very excited with this particular webinar because I know our speaker is really very excellent in this particular field. And it's very appropriate, especially that we are looking to continuously design our plans, our modules, and even other activities. I think design thinking is very important in this particular setup where we are trying to not only design, but also, kasi I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the things that is really looking forward in this particular setup is the prototyping. So checking if that particular design is kaya ba, okay ba siya? If not, then we go back to the designing process. So very rich. I think this will be a very rich webinar, and I'm looking forward to this one.
Yan, thank you so much for that input, no, Sir Jello. Sir Jambi, expectations. Ano yung mga expectation? Kasi syempre hindi naman tayo, well, aminado syempre tayo, hindi naman tayo experts on design thinking. Kasi kung experts tayo, di malamang tayo na rin na nag-share today. Pero precisely why we have invited experts on the field because ano nga, no, yung relevance ng design thinking. Any thoughts, Sir Jambi?
Ako siguro, Sir Franco, I have two expectations. Number one, I suppose many of us, if not all of us, have attended at least one webinar that has tackled design thinking. My hope is that this webinar will support that, will hopefully simplify it even more for us. And yun nga, it's another perspective, it's another context. Malaking bagay na yung guest natin for this afternoon ay nagpa-practice ng design thinking sa ibang bansa. So, maganda na malaman natin na ganun pala siya ka-effective kasi it adjusts to the context of the students, the users, kasi nga, uh, very vital sa design thinking yung kikilalanin mo yung kikilalanin mo yung user, kikilalanin mo yung student. So, yun, ano siya, if only for the new context, the new perspective, sulit na kagad for me tong afternoon na to.
Yes, indeed, no. Okay, Teacher Pao.
Yes, okay. Very excited ako dito sa design thinking, no? Kasi first and foremost, it's quite new, no? Quite new to the academe. It's a process, no? So I'm very interested to know how the process is. Kasi sanay tayo na yes, we are teachers and then we just follow with the decision, ito na yung gagawin, ito na siya. So pero ngayon dito sa design thinking, yung sinasabi nga ni Sir Jello, no, may prototype, tignan muna kung mag-work, testing mo muna, pag di nag-work, balik ka ulit sa design. No, hindi siya yung isasabak mo agad. Tapos pag di nag-work, sige, wala, gagastos na naman tayo ng bago. So I think it's very important that we understand the process of design thinking. I'm almost thinking it's the same as maybe advertising, branding, or processing products, no, before it's released to the market. So I think this is something parallel to the education sector.
Yes, something very, very relevant talaga, no? Pero talaga sa totoo lang naman talaga, in terms of like origin, syempre mas gamit talaga to in terms of mga industries, no? Yung mga production of products. Kaya talagang, isa talaga yung sa pinaka. Pero, sobrang laki din ng relevance ng design thinking within sa education. Okay? Kasi nga,
Yeah.
nga natin, this in the 21st century, teachers are no longer just teaching in the classroom. Okay? We're not just anymore delivering content, okay, etc. No, we're now designing the instruction, designing the learning process. Okay, and in that sense, teachers, no, design thinking becomes very, very relevant when we talk about how do we design assessments. Okay, how do we design instructions. Okay, how do we design the entire teaching learning process. Okay, kaya ako rin personally very excited. Okay, well, of course, aside from that, no, our speaker for today is my mentor, so I'm really proud, no, to have her here in Kaagapay support. Okay. Sir Jambi, Sir Jello, and Miss Pau, no, let's no longer prolong our introduction. Let's now welcome, no, to Kaagapay Teacher Support our speakers for today. Initially, no, speaker. Okay. But just this
Yes.
morning, no, I was informed by my mentor
Wonderful
that
surprise.
yes, a wonderful
Wow.
surprise, wonderful addition
Yeah.
that she
Bongga.
invited, no, a colleague, an expert, no, in terms of design thinking. Okay, and hopefully I get to introduce her properly later on. Okay, but first let me introduce to you our first speaker for today. No, one of our speakers for today. Um, one of our speakers for today, Bonnie Shelley, is an instructional technology facilitator at for the East Baton Rouge Parish School System in Louisiana, South Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken. She's a Google for Education certified innovator, trainer, and coach, Google Educator Group Leader, GEG South Louisiana, founder of Global GEG, and leader of Global GEG's Echo Open Chat. In addition, Bonnie is also an EdChange global leader and is passionate about supporting technology integration in schools. She shares her support and passion for coaching by bringing coaches together on a global scale. So, if that does not excite the teachers, I don't know what will. Okay,
Sir Franklin,
with the back, yes.
you know what excites me more? Kasi 'di ba, every time we mention a province in the Philippines, para palagi natin sinasabi, "Oh, soon we'll go there." So are we also going to Louisiana?
Yeah, we'll think about it. No? We'll definitely consider. But our speaker actually went, if not mistaken, she went actually here in the Philippines sometime to visit. Okay? And our second speaker, no, our surprise speaker for today. So we have also, no, Stephanie Rothstein, a Google certified innovator, coach, trainer, and educational leader in her school district in California. She chairs a design thinking pathway. So if we're talking about design thinking, she is an expert in design thinking and plus application in the classroom. Okay, so we're going to see a very highly contextualized discussion of design thinking from our two speakers for today. So let's all welcome now Steph and Bonnie into our into Kaagapay Teacher Support. Hello, Bonnie. Welcome.
Hi, Bonnie.
And
Hello.
Steph, welcome. Yeah. So
Hello.
we're welcome to Kaagapay Teacher Support, Steph and Bonnie. And again, we thank you for lending your time with us. Now, I know we're very busy because you're not only doing work for your schools, you're doing work for other school, for other teachers. No, so maybe like
And
teachers
Sir
from
Franco,
our chat.
what time is it there actually,
Yeah.
Bonnie?
For
Yes,
me, it's midnight, but I'm so
Midnight.
midnight.
excited, not even tired. I'm just excited to be here.
Just imagine that, no? Actually, when I set this time, I just realized, no, that the time was not convenient for Steph and Bonnie, no, in the first. But she said it's okay. I'm excited. I would like to meet the teachers there in the Philippines. I'd like to talk about this. And I didn't even say, I didn't even ask her twice, no, regarding this. No, when I asked her via chat, go, let's do it. Okay. So we're excited. So Bonnie and Steph, maybe we could, before we turn the floor to you, maybe you could give us like a short overview, like a glimpse of what's going to happen. What are the teachers going to expect for the next 90 minutes or so in your session?
Yeah, so Franco, we talked about maybe, I know like 90 minutes is a long time to sit. So we were gonna do like the first 45 minutes, maybe like from a like my perspective. I am newer to design thinking. I kind of got introduced to it with the innovator program through Google, and that is also where I met Stephanie. And then take a break, and then we can come back and kind of look at it at how you could use it in your classroom, like with your learners.
Yep. So
Right.
I'm right there with you, Bonnie. And I think the two parts, the thing that I'm really excited about is in the first half, we'll be looking at it from an adult learner lens. So thinking about it from Bonnie's perspective, how she learned it, where I learned it from before going to the Innovator Academy, how it's implemented perhaps from the adults in my pathway and the teachers, and then moving it into how that's applied in the classroom with students, and then even doing some hands-on pieces. Hopefully, I'm not spoiling anything. More towards the end, where everybody who is watching will actually be doing some design thinking. So after watching it being modeled, then they're going to experience it a bit with us. Franco, we're not hearing you.
You're on mute.
Sorry. So we'll be turning the floor to you now, so that you could start with your session. And teachers, enjoy the session for today. And
Franco,
Bonnie and Steph,
sir, I just have
yes,
one quick question for Bonnie.
go ahead, Sir Jambi.
And so I feel I need to ask this before we talk about the topic this afternoon because it's not related. Very quickly, how is Franco as a mentee?
He's wonderful. I mean, I feel like mentee is a strong word. Like I would definitely say he was my colleague. Like, you know, he does all this. He's just blown up overnight. I'm definitely just a sounding board for things Franco talks about. He's amazing. He's never late. He's always organized. It's perfect. It's great.
And
Thank
Mentee
you,
is
sir.
a strong word.
we're very proud of him also.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
I can vouch
That
for this. She calls me raving about him. Whenever she's done with a
Wow.
call, she's like, "Oh, I'm so lucky I got to meet with my innovator mentee." But she doesn't even call
Brilliant.
him that. That's what she
Yeah,
says.
it's brilliant.
Mhm.
Thank you. That now puts so much pressure. So let's take off the pressure on me, and let's now give the floor to Steph and Bonnie for today. Good luck, Bonnie and Steph. Thank you so much again.
Good luck.
Teachers, enjoy the session for today.
All right. The Steph and Bonnie show. It's our favorite.
It is our favorite.
This is our favorite. So I'm so happy to be here, and I want to go on record and say that I'm really honored to be here talking with teachers from the Philippines. Like there are so many great like ed tech leaders that come from the Philippines. We know quite a few. Stephanie and I actually met in Singapore, and where we met like Adrian Cruz and Gary Garcia and all these amazing people. Jessica, So really, really honored to be here and talking to this Filipino teachers. I personally have worked with Filipino teachers before, and I know like I'm very honored to be here. I don't know about you, Steph. I'm sure.
I could not agree more. I was telling Bonnie, so the school that I taught before, my very first school, I've been teaching now for 18 years. My very first school, the population of the school, it was like 85% Filipino in South San Francisco. And so I grew very close with the students and the staff, and my mentor teacher is Filipino and his family goes back to the Philippines every year. And so I learned a great deal, and near and dear to my heart. So I feel very honored and blessed to be here today. So thank you very much.
I really do feel like they're like really strong educational, like traditions. Every time I, do something with somebody from the Philippines, it's just super cool. So today we're going to be talking about design thinking, and teaching and learning in the 21st century. As Franco so kindly introduced me, I'm Bonnie Chalette. I work in the East Baton Rouge Parish school system, all the way at the bottom of Louisiana. I'm very lucky. I serve like at the district level. I feel like now when we talk about where we work, we also have to explain like what method we're using for teaching. So I'm in a district of about 40,000 students. We have been one-to-one, like with devices for 5 years now. We have been back fully face-to-face for a few months now, since like in November, I think. But we still have a lot of kids who have opted to stay virtual. So right now our teachers are doing this crazy like hybrid live stream situation. So that's what I work with a lot, are teachers like trying to figure out how to engage those online students, how to, build up the capacity of their students in their classroom. And you can find me on Twitter here, or reach out to me after. And like you said, I have all the badges. And so I'm looking forward to connecting with all of you later. And Stephanie,
That's me. Our pictures look very similar because they were both taken at our Innovator Academy, and we both like them and use them. So people confuse us often, but I don't mind being confused for Bonnie because she's great. So I am Stephanie Rothstein, and my official title is an EdTech TOSA. That's at my school district's title. It stands for Teacher on Special Assignment. I have moved into educational leadership. I was just now moved fully out of the classroom, but I chair a design-based thinking pathway. I teach the English classes. I might say I taught, but I don't know, the English classes in that pathway for 9th graders. So our pathway is 9th through 12th grade, and it combines English, history, and science. So it's an intercurricular project-based learning design thinking pathway, and it's called LEAD, which stands for Learn, Explore, Act, Design. It is located in Los Gatos, California. So if you don't know where that is, it is in Northern California in Silicon Valley. So in the heart of all of the ed tech world and technology world, in the heart of where Facebook and Google and all of those places are. And I'm quite lucky to be here. And you can find me, that's my email, and my website has my portfolio. My background that in terms of our school and our district, Bonnie was sharing about hers. So we're a high school district. We're a smaller high school district of just 2 high schools. So when I have my role, like I have many hats on because we're a smaller district, and all hands are doing all of the work. We are currently still virtual, but we are returning for hybrid instruction starting in 2 weeks. So that is what I am doing right now, is helping with that rollout, supporting teachers and supporting students with all of that. I'm a coach, trainer, and innovator. And Bonnie and I both are 2 of the founding members of Global GEG. That is part of what we did together. And in addition to that, some of the things, if you go to my website, that I am more than happy for you to see are, I've been writing lots and doing lots of articles and presentations, and I am more than happy to support all of you in any way that I can. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
And so you can see why I was so glad when, Franco asked me to do this, and I was like, yeah, I can, but I was like, I also know somebody that'll make it like really good. So you can see why I'm so glad and grateful Steph came.
Happy to join you, Bonnie. I'll join you anywhere.
Yes. All right. So, like I said, I am newer to design thinking than some people. I was kind of introduced to it in 2019 at the Singapore Google Innovator Academy, and so I really had to like it's hard. I mean, it's tough thinking. And there would just be like times where they'd be like, "We're design thinking." I was like, "What is this?" And then by the end, I was like, "Oh, design thinking." It's like a 4-letter word now, because it is difficult, and it is very much a process of learning. um so really it is, and Steph, jump in, it is a process of learning, like through discovery. And you start like with that empathy piece, and it really focuses on like defining your problem, and then ideating, which that was also a new word for me. Building a prototype, testing that idea, and then those last two steps, kind of keeping that on a loop, continuing to build ideas, fail forward, with your mistakes, and build on mistakes. Like, mistakes aren't a bad word in design thinking. So, Steph, what am I leaving out?
So I would say you're not leaving anything out, but I would say that for me, when I think about this, as was mentioned in our intro, and each of our wonderful introducers were mentioning this, but it is a process, right? It's a framework for how you think about approaching problems. And so if we're going to approach a problem, it really is about starting to realize that it is not just about you. And so the idea that it begins with empathy means that it is inclusive of others. So if we're going to go about problem solving, the world is not just about me problem solving for myself, right? Like, I can do that, but is it going to have impact? And so the idea of design thinking is that it really needs to have impact. And so if we begin in a place of empathy, that really means that we are listening to the needs of other people. And so how do you do that? You do that through a process of interviewing them. And then you hone in on defining the problem, not just the problem you thought it was, but the problem that they actually have. And that in itself is a process to learn how to listen, and to learn how to define it, and to double check that you're right, and to double check that it's accurate for them and for others, and that they represent enough people that is worthy to pursue. And then ideating around that, prototyping around that, testing all of those again, as Bonnie was mentioning, right? They're cyclical. So these processes, it isn't just that you do it once and you're done, but it's that you do it to help you improve on continuing to improve on it. And that really is the process of design thinking. It's not something that is ever finished, but it is a way to approach problems and continue to innovate around them.
Yeah, it is a lifestyle, like, if Steph and I work together on lots of projects now, and like I can see this play into like how, should we strategize our approach, like whether now I'm just so used to it, or it is a process and a framework for solving all kinds of problems. And that's kind of what we were planning on talking about today, is kind of how you can use it like from an adult learner view, like tackling problems in your classrooms, in your school, or in education in general. And then taking that same framework and like using it with your students and building that capacity within them.
I would agree. Sorry, are you hearing my children in the background? Is that what the laugh was? I have a door closed. I'm sorry, everybody in the Philippines. I have a door closed. I'm locked in a room, and you can still hear my 3 children. My goodness, they are loud. I apologize to everyone in the world.
I love our kids. So, and this is just me, like, I took some pictures from Singapore when we walked, like I said, when I walked through this, and we started by interviewing a person. Like, we had to pinpoint a problem at home. I interviewed a school. I don't know about you guys, but we have so much data just like floating around, and I knew it was a problem because I feel like my teachers were spending lots of time like making binders, but like not really using the data to benefit their students. So that was kind of what I thought the problem was. And so I interviewed teachers, I interviewed principals, and I took all that and I put it together in my application for the Google Innovator Academy. And from there, they took my problem. I wrote a how might we statement which we're all going to do today. I wrote a how might we statement, and then I built upon that. So this is, I had to work through those steps, ideate, and building a prototype. And then ultimately, this was not my project. This project did not work for me. I still am not comfortable. That is not something I'm comfortable with. I got to get better with failure. I'm still not good at it. But they even have a nice little fail bell that you ring, and to celebrate your failing forward. And so this is just a process like from my perspective, and it definitely now the prototyping and the testing is something that I've taken into like all of my projects at work. If I'm building something out for a school, like I saw the other day, Franco was doing something really cool. He's like building out like digital report cards for schools. He's helping them. And I'm absolutely certain that he went through a process of prototyping and testing, and whether he labeled that design thinking or not, like that is that idea. Steph, leaving anything out?
No, I think you're good. I can talk about it on the next one, I think, a little bit. So Bonnie and I both experienced this at the Innovator Academy, and part of what we had to do was begin by interviewing people in order to better understand their needs, so that when we went to the Academy, we were actually working on a problem that involved real people. And we went through that process, and that's what I would call an empathy interview. I even have, so where I first learned about design thinking was not at the Innovator Academy. It was before the Innovator Academy. I went to Stanford's D School standing for Design School, and it's a school for design thinking. And and the resources there, but I have like all my stuff. Well, I have it from everywhere. And so this was one of the pieces that they gave us when I was at the D School, the Empathy Field Guide. And then I still have my book that I was taking notes in, and all those pieces where Bonnie was showing all the Post-its everywhere. I have all that stuff from the Innovator Academy. But really, I would say the reason why I'm sharing that is that design thinking, it's not a clean process. Like, I know we're showing you this process that like sits nicely on a slide, but it is messy, and it is messy on purpose, because ideas for problem solving, if it was simple, it would already be solved. So the idea is that it is messy because it's challenging. I have my stuff from that academy where I was taking notes on every single little thing. So what I thought that we would do to actually help you maybe see what it feels like is Bonnie and I are going to model a thing that I did when I was at the D School at Stanford. And it was a way that we had the adults in the room model something that could be used with students easily. I did something like this with students, and I could talk about how it was adapted. But there is a whole free series of, or I would say a Google Drive folder that contains all the things from that I got from the D School. It's a public folder, so I'm not giving you something that you couldn't get. But really, it takes someone like walking you through what these things are to understand how to use them. So, so this one has this, what is called the rapid introduction, right? It's a rapid process for design thinking to help you, that you could then work with other adults and also help you work with students on it. So this one is called the weekend dinner experience. And the idea is that you are going to go through all the steps of the design thinking process pretty quickly. We'll do them quicker than it says on here. And it helps you learn the process as well as learn about another person. So it's a great way to do an introduction, a great way to begin something. And there are a few different ones that are in that folder. This was a great one, I think, for adults. The one that we did with students at my school was redesigning your morning routine, like helping them to when they think about waking up in the morning. There's also like redesign the school lunch experience. So there are ones that are geared more at students. So this one is called the weeknight dinner experience. And I made sure that Bonnie hadn't done it so that it is like full on accurate here. This is what it would be like if you were really doing it with another person. So we're going to go to the next one, and I'm going to be interviewing Bonnie and then show you what it looks like to to do this process. So this is small, I know, perhaps to see, so I will make sure that I am saying everything. So the beginning step, we're on the empathize piece. If you look over on the right side, it's going to tell you what
I
part
did drop the link in the chat for everybody, the link to the PDF.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so, and I'll drop that in there again, but yes.
Okay, and so you totally can, as we're going through this, if you would like to. Bonnie's going to answer it for her, and I might even, if we're being accurate, the way that I would do this is I would always be taking notes on what she said, right? So I might write it down so that I have things to then respond to. But you are more than welcome to answer some of these in the chat if you want to. We could learn about your own weeknight dinner experience. So the idea at the start is, as the interviewer, I come up with a question that I would want to ask her that will help provide me insight both about her and her experience. So I'm going to ask Bonnie, could you tell me a story about a time when you really loved having food with another person?
Oh, every day, all day. Are we talking about lunch or like?
we'll go with dinner, since this is meant to be like a weeknight dinner. But like, what did that experience feel like? What did it entail? What kind of food was it? Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Well, I learned far too late in life that I really like curry. We don't. It's not a thing we have a lot in Louisiana, but I was introduced to it by my better half. And and whenever he makes a curry from scratch, it's like a time consuming, like just a labor of love, and he takes all this time to cook me this delicious meal, and my belly is all warm and fuzzy, and I eat all the curry and all the fun breads.
Okay, so you love curries and breads, and when we think about
carbs.
Okay, all right. When we think about what your normal weeknight dinner routine involves, does it involve getting to have curry and bread? No. Okay.
No, it does not.
What gets in the way of you being able to have that experience on a regular basis?
Time. Time and effort, weeknights difficult.
What makes it difficult?
I get home late in the afternoon, and I have to get all the ingredients. Don't always have time to go to the store. Don't always have time to cook. Sometimes end up eating much less glamorous food.
Okay. So, all right. So I hope that you're beginning to see that the interview can go much longer. And usually it's a back and forth, actually. So you would both be interviewing one another. I might then ask her, I know a lot about Bonnie, but I might ask her questions about where she's from or what her family's like. I know Bonnie has a daughter. So when I think about the things that perhaps also are consuming of her time, right? And why she might be inundated. Not only is she doing amazing things at work, but she's also balancing things at home and right. And. So I already knew that, but you're going to interview people and actually get to know them. What you end up doing with that is what we will show you later on, that you actually map out all the things that you know about this person, right? Bonnie is an educator. Bonnie is, right? And you put like their age, educator, she's a mom, right? She has a partner. And then all of the things that we know, right? That there are certain things that are getting in the way of her being able to have this glamorous weeknight dinner experience that would be so lovely for her, right? That's filled with carbs. So that would be, then we're going to go to this next one, right? Where we're trying to imagine the meaning. So I'm going to start to pull out some of these things. We're getting into the defining piece, right? So if I was going to define what the issue was, I might say to her, Bonnie, would it be accurate if I said that that the biggest piece that is getting in your way is that time piece, and that it takes a lot of effort, perhaps after a long day, in order to make something like this happen. Okay. Okay. So she's saying yes on that. And then we would start to perhaps brainstorm is that the accurate topic? So the topic is that you're saying that we're defining the problem as that. So what you desire is the ability to do something that maybe would not take too much time, not take too much effort, but would still allow you to enjoy a meal that brings back that experience of a curry with lots of bread. Something along those
I'm into this idea.
Okay, so now we're going to go, we've defined the problem. Now we're going to go to the next slide and we're going to start to ideate. And this is where I would love, people in the chat could for sure be putting in, what would your ideas be? Oh, I don't know where the slide went on this one. Oh, there we go. Okay, so what would your ideas be for this one? And when you ideate, you put in as many ideas as you can. Right? So I would just start to write. And the idea is that you do not censor yourself throughout this process.
This is all the Post-its.
A million Post-its everywhere, right?
A million Post-its.
And a lot of times they encourage you actually to just draw them out. So you could write them out, but you could also draw things that are representative of what it would mean. So it could be something like, I'm drawing out her getting to hire a chef for like once a month that comes in and makes it, or a service that delivers just curry and bread to her once a week, or right, like maybe I'm coming up with a bunch of ideas, or maybe we've now taught her daughter how to do some of this cooking and she somehow
Word. I'm into that plan.
Okay, so whatever my ideas are, I'm sketching them out. And then if you notice, the next one is I'm going to get feedback from my partner. So I just named 3 ideas. I just was coming up with them. Did any of those, I know you said word to one of them, did any of them strike your fancy? Or would you like us to go further on one of them?
I like the idea of a service bringing it to me.
Okay, so bringing it, do you like the idea of it already being cooked? Or do you want to still experience the cooking? Does that matter?
I like the idea of it being cooked.
Okay, so something
by
that
someone
arrives.
else. Yes.
Okay. So now we've got this idea of something coming to her from somebody else. We've moved forward. She's given us feedback already. I haven't prototyped anything, but she's given feedback that now I have a little more information. She doesn't like the idea of like a service bringing her ingredients because that's still going to be work, right? So she wants something delivered, but maybe we don't want her to have to worry about it right before. So maybe when I move into prototyping, my idea becomes that I'm going to prototype something that will ask her some questions early in the morning or maybe the day before. And it asks her questions about a specific like spice level that she'd be interested in for that day, or a specific region of the world that she would want to taste a new curry from. And like there would be like checkoffs of these questions. And then the next day we get a time, the next day rolls around and here comes a fully cooked meal that like meets the checkoffs that she has clicked in this app the day before it's stressful, before it consumes her time. And then it arrives at the time that she has desired. Like that might be what I prototype, is some sort of service that would do that for her with a courier involved in the curry. I don't know.
I like it.
I would call it curry. All right, you heard it here.
Right here.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that would be on the prototype. I'm really proud of that, Bonnie. I'm really proud of that. Okay. So,
love it.
Okay. So on the next slide is the prototype, which I just did really quickly. You didn't see me draw anything
still
out.
in courier.
It's okay. I'm into this. Okay. So what I would do for the prototype, you actually draw it fully out. You take that one Post-it and you flesh it out. When I was at the design school in Stanford, they gave us like a cart of supplies. And this might be where you've seen some people do that in a space, in a design lab or a design thinking studio space, is they might have like a cart of random stuff. It doesn't have to be anything that's new. They had recyclable material, all these scrap pieces, cut up stuff, and
this is like a maker space.
A
lot of times I hear this called like a maker space.
Yes.
Yeah. The new terminology.
Exactly right. And so we would go over to the cart and you'd grab it and you'd have to create something that would be representative of it. And you could represent it in one of two ways. It either could represent it in form, so it would look like what it's supposed to, or in function. It would do the job, right? It would move or tinker if it was something that needed to move or tinker. But it didn't have to look like it because you're making it out of spoons and tape and glue and whatever. So perhaps what I make for Bonnie is like something that is like a checkoff menu that would be representative of perhaps something that would be on a website or on an app or something like that. But I'm doing it graphically so she could see what it is, and it would contain the lists and things that she would fill in. She would look at that and still give me some more feedback on it. We'd test it on her. So the next part after you prototype it is the testing. And the testing looks a little bit different depending on who you're working with. So if it's something where they actually can physically do something with it, I might hand it to her and she'll play around. And usually the idea is that you actually don't say much. They take it and they do stuff with it. And then they're like, wait, what does this do? And why would I want this here? And then you might have a conversation about it. But what you want is what would be true in the real world. You're not going to get to go around introducing whatever it is that you make to the whole world, right? You want to know what is their first reaction. Does something make sense? Do they get why you've done this? And then you can clarify and talk it through. It is really fun to do these because the topics are interesting. You're connecting with a person. If you can imagine doing this even at a staff meeting or something for your school or your environment, right? It really does. It provides an authentic experience. It gets people out of their comfort zone, but at the same time, it's about something that they want. You're learning things about people. And you're having fun doing it. And so as long as you have a topic, I think that's interesting, you can introduce a methodology, right?
Like I could see a school doing this like in the beginning of the school year to like introduce your staff and it's like an icebreaker. And then using that later in the year to try to address a problem at the school.
Yes.
Like to try to look at, what the teachers are struggling with, have them interview each other and go through this same process. So like it just goes back to that idea that this is a framework that is applicable in so many situations.
I am a fan in education of when you are introducing, whether it be a framework, a methodology, a tool, you do it in a way that at first you get to learn the tool or the methodology that is fun. It brings people together, but it isn't something that I'm also learning content at the same time. So this one is, right? It's too much. Mm-hmm. But then now we've done the process. So now the process, we've eased into the process. We get what it feels like. And then we can do it with content that is for our curriculum, for our class, for our staff, real problems that we have to dive deep in, right? So that is the process. You just did a rapid design thinking. Thank you for letting me interview you, Bonnie.
I loved it.
I feel like we should copyright Courier. I'm kind of into this idea. Okay.
We came up with that drive thing the other day, like on live.
We really did. Yeah.
We invented an app an add-on the other day online.
We should do this. We should do this more often. Okay. So when we were going through these processes, there are a lot of things that both of us learned at the Innovator Academy, and I'm going to pass this to Bonnie, but we were introduced to it in the process of design thinking, and there were kind of these like truisms. I don't know another way to think about it. Things that perhaps get in your way as you are trying to really authentically do design thinking. And so Bonnie's going to take you through what some of those are that have really helped both of us.
One of the things they said that really spoke to me was like someday versus Monday. We're all so busy. Like Franco, I think that's one of the reasons I'm so like in awe of him. Like he's like, a dad and like an innovator, and he started this platform. He's just working constantly, and he is. I can be a someday person. Like, yeah, I'll get to it. But I've really had to work on becoming like a Monday. Like this starts Monday. In this, like I said, it's got to start someday, and it is easy because we are so busy. And like this year, this was the year I think everybody could have, done this. Like, written an excuse that anybody would have taken. You know, it's been nuts globally. But I've just seen so many people like use this time to also like launch so many amazing things. If you look around, like education looks completely different than it looked last year.
It does.
Because of like innovation and people being like, all right, I'm going to launch this today. I know it's in the middle of, you know, this insane pandemic and the world's going crazy. So just that really stuck with me, is because sometimes I can put things off. I'm not completely opposed.
I also think about this as like the big picture is the someday, like where do I want to get eventually? But what do I have to do tomorrow to like get me on the path to get
and that's
there?
like a different way of the same, like, yes, exactly. Two things. Where you want to see Steph, same thing, two different. And this one, it's different. We talk a lot about imposter syndrome, and I kind of saw this picture and it spoke to me because it's like this, you know, this woman looking up and thinking like, and that's how I feel often when I'm around some of the people I'm around, like Stephanie. It's like, what am I doing with these people? I got no business being here. All the time. Same like with Franco, we were talking before we started, and you know, like we were, you know, we're colleagues, and technically on paper it says like I'm his mentee. It's not the case. I don't feel. I feel like we learn from each other, and I am just happy to be connected. But that imposter syndrome is something like I think a lot of people really struggle with. Like, am I the person who could launch this project? Am I the person who could lead this pathway? Or could I implement design thinking at my school or in my classroom? And the answer to all that is yes. It's just it can be hard, but like a huge step and a huge obstacle for so many people is that imposter syndrome and getting in your own way. Steph, are you in agreement with me?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I learned when we were at the Innovator Academy is that everyone feels it. And I continue in all the books that I read, right? People who have done and produced and created so many great things, and then they're still writing about it. So I just am like, okay, it's a human emotion, and we just need to get out of our own heads and just go, everybody has something to share, and your story is worth sharing, and you can and should contribute. Like, you are doing worthy things, so share them.
And you should surround your people with that people that tell you to share. And definitely though, and then something Stephanie and we talked about the other day, like, being surrounding yourself with people who want to build you up, for sure. Like, not somebody that's just going to leave you behind, at some point, somebody that they're in it to win it with you.
Agreed.
Obviously this picture spoke to me, because of, like I said, the failing forward idea, of like design thinking and that ideating, and then the prototyping and the testing and in the continual cycle. A lot of times you'll see graphics of design thinking and it'll have like the infinity symbol built in, with that idea that it's not over. And even so, say you finish or whatever you launch, you can always go back and make it better. I mean, like I said, Steph and I, neither of us launched our initial projects that we planned. And then we ended up launching a project together. So yeah, I mean, it did begin as a mistake.
Something you just said reminded me also of, gosh, which book was it? It was in this one.
She reads so many books.
I read a lot of books, but we won't go there, Bonnie. But I was reading The Infinite Game with Simon Sinek, but there was a part of it where he talks about how, like, he was talking about the launch of some really big things, and that if you actually are in it for the infinite game, which I would argue is thinking about the world through a design thinking lens, right? Like, how do we continuously grow? And he talks about how you're not just worried about your own self and your own company. You want to see everything progress forward. So if Bonnie does something that is awesome and successful, that is wonderful, and then somebody else builds on it, it doesn't mean Bonnie's was a failure. It was a step in the process to help somebody else then build on it and make it better. And we should be looking at our processes as working towards progression. And it really helped me think about the idea of like, what is the purpose of education? If we're in education for growth, then it is always about getting better. So when somebody does something that is great, that then I can try, and then I improve upon it for my space, like that is the whole point. And that's that continuous cycle of design thinking means that we are ever improving. And I just love that.
Yeah. And then this idea to like in the ideating process, like whatever your thought is, you're supposed to write it on the Post-it, even if it's, like you're like, there's no way. But if you have an idea, you're supposed to write it down. And this is like that 10x thinking that, you got to shoot your shot, shoot the moon shot, go big. And this is something, I mean, like I was at work today and people were like, what are you doing, on a Friday night? I'm like, well, I'm speaking to 300 people in the Philippines at midnight. Like that isn't what I would necessarily have anticipated saying 6 months ago. But here I am, and it's all kind of due to design thinking and being around the right people that also use this formulaic method in launching projects.
I would agree, right? It's a design thinking, and we'll show you some other books because, as Bonnie mentioned, I'm a fan of books.
Look at this, and here's a book.
Here's a book. Yeah, I brought them all to show. Like I do have them. This one's a good starting place. I have them.
If nobody they trusted that you had these books. Like these feel
okay, fine. I'm surrounded by more than was on the slides. Okay, Bonnie.
She went and got all the books, guys, to show you because she loves them.
I didn't go buy them today. I had them.
I know.
Yes. Okay.
I know. I made you like stack them.
I do. I stack them around me. I don't know what I would do without them. But I would say when we think about how to actually push into design thinking, because it's a process, you can do it at any time, right? You just begin. But what you really have to start to think about is, what is it that you are wanting to design think around?
Yeah.
And whatever it is needs to be authentic. So usually that's rooted in something that is true for you. And then you figure out, is this also true for other people? Or it's that you've witnessed it or seen it in your school or your environment, right? Something around you, but it's got to be an authentic problem. And then I think there's another one that's on there that's also a great one. This one, if you're trying to think about stuff as an individual, like moving your life forward, there's a series of these, the Design Thinking Life Playbook, and then there's other ones that are like more workbookish, but this one is helpful if what you're trying to design think is your path. So if you're thinking about your own job or your pathway forward or your own life, right? This is a way to start to think about, how do I do this beyond the classroom, beyond education, but those can be involved in it. But how do I design think my next steps for me too? And it's really quite interesting. I loved it. So it's about visualizing a joyful life and how to do that and embracing change. Because a lot of times as you approach,
it does sound good. I haven't read that. I'm going to have to read that.
It's more like, it's like a workbook-ish, like work through it kind of journal style.
Like you okay.
Yeah, it's great. And so it helps you really kind of think through your next steps, because I think that's what design thinking does to you. As you live in it, all of a sudden you realize, okay, it's more than how I want to do my lessons. It's how I want to decide all of my big decisions. And it's helped me a lot, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think like Steph and I, because we do lots of projects together. And we've had some unconventional solutions to problems. We do once a month, we do a fake award show to give fake awards to people because these people deserve recognition. And we were struggling to find a way to recognize people that are doing all these great things for our group. And after talking, we're like, we're just going to have to get on camera once a month and make fake awards. And, and now it wouldn't have imagined it impacted this, now it's crazy.
But we totally did go through the process. We threw out tons of ideas. We prototyped stuff. We've tried things. We've tested certain parts and we didn't like certain things and we threw them out and tested other ones. There was a great piece in the chat talking about how this could be used as a strategy to help students learn and develop self-directed learning, which I
Yes.
totally agree with, and we're going to get there. I love that. You make me happy that you even said that. So.
Now I'm not sure, Franco, we discussed we were supposed to take a break. Do you want us to keep going? How are things? This is like it was kind of the middle. We put a slide here for this.
It's okay. I think we can entertain some questions and comments from audience, and also maybe highlight some also share. No, I'd like to invite my co-administrators to be back.
Yay!
Yeah.
And then after this, we plan to move to stuff that is specific to the classroom. So now that they've got processed, then we'll go to the classroom stuff, if that helps.
But maybe Steph, before we move on to that, I'd like to I've been engaging in the chat now. By the way, shout out to Abid Patel. He's here. Yes, also from Google Certified Innovators. So I think one of the most fascinating aspect of design thinking is that you start in a great the step one of design thinking sets you up for like the right way right away, because you're doing empathizing or your empathy, so right there, from the get-go, before you even think about because that's sometimes our biggest mistake, when we have a problem, we get into the solution right away. We think of like how to solve it, how to go about it. Okay? We never really thought of like, oh, oops, maybe we should stop first, try to understand the problem from the user's perspectives, okay? Or for those who are experiencing the problem, so that we can actually design something that works for them. Okay, Steph and Bonnie, and to the admins, I'd like to share a very, very interesting activity when I first encountered design thinking back when I was I think like 2-3 years ago, even before the innovators camp. Okay, this was an activity for administrators in our school. Okay, and they asked us to do this tower. Okay, made of sticks, using a tape and sticks. Build a tower, and the challenge is that your tower stands by putting a marshmallow on top. So we came into the rush, we rush into it, we rush into the activity, build the tower as high as it can, so that we can beat everyone else in the room. And then after we have built the tower, we put the marshmallow, and then we failed. The entire tower collapsed. Okay, and what did we miss there? We missed to consider the marshmallow in the first place. That's the empathy right there, not considering your users, who's going to who's involved in the problem, who's going to benefit in the problem, would eventually cause your tower to collapse. So that's actually one of
Would be
the
a great
great
graphic. You should make that. You should sketch that out. Wouldn't that be a
that
good graphic?
metaphor,
It's so
I have done
good.
that. I have totally done that challenge, and I have never heard it analyzed like that. And you just totally changed my viewpoint of that entire challenge. Like that was a mic drop moment, Franco.
Right.
See, that's what he does. That's what he does. He says
That
it with a
was
smile
so
on his face. He
good.
just changes all your perceptions.
He
That's what
comes
he
in
does.
2 minutes, and I was like, all right, I'm done. That was so good.
So about my co-administrators, thoughts, ideas before we entertain some questions from our audience and ideas before proceeding to the second part of our session for today.
Okay, I'd like to share, no? Like listening to Steph and Bonnie, it is really a process. You cannot just dive in, okay, what's the problem? You have to know first who are involved in the process. So it's not the me problem, it's the our problem. So it's whenever that's when I go back to teaching now, because right now I'm an admin, but when I go back to teaching, I will always carry this lesson that I've heard from both Steph and Bonnie, that you have to really look first into the people that will be affected with what you are trying to solve. So that's a very good piece of information that I got here.
Oh,
Thank you.
I'm glad that helped. I do think that leaders could use. I work like kind of adjacent to principals a lot. Like I get to work at district level. I work with them, but I don't have to necessarily work for them. And so I can say these kinds of things. But yeah, I think leadership could definitely benefit from like the interviewing part. Like what do you think the problem is, and talking to people closer to the problem.
We'd love that, no, Bonnie. We'd love our administrators do that. But indeed, no, indeed, correct. No. Sir Jambi, Sir Jello, any thoughts, ideas? I can't see questions from the audience, so we're just continue with admins sharing first. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe Sundelo can speak last. For well, what I like about what I've seen so far is how design thinking is applicable even outside of the education system. So, yeah, even if you're an administrator, in fact, even if you're not at all connected to education, this is something that you can apply. And I also appreciate how it's not linear. It does not attempt to be linear because we don't really think that way. That's not how the world works. That's not how people think. So I think this is the closest we can get to understanding how and really empathizing how the learners think, how we process, how we would commit mistakes and in fact should commit mistakes and learn from them thereafter. So that's what I like about design thinking.
We have a great question there. I'm happy to help with it if you want.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Steph.
Is that
Let's
okay?
address that question first. Yes, yes.
I didn't want to interrupt. Okay. I love this question though. What types of questions would we prepare as a brief when we define a problem? And often when you begin, the way that it was introduced to me at Stanford was we came up with what we thought were our questions for the empathy interview. And those, when we went out, we actually went out on the Stanford campus. So we came up with, we were told to work on a particular issue. We had a group thing that we were working on, and we actually went out and talked to people on the Stanford campus. And we came up with our questions. But then when it came to the definition piece, what we really had to start to do was ask why over and over. And so there's this process that it's called the 5 whys. And really it's that it is helping you hone in on what is the root cause. And so that becomes a term that we use a lot, is really understanding what is the root cause of the problem. So you might think that the problem is one thing, but when you start asking, well, why is that? And why would they feel that way? And why do you think these people, right? When you keep asking it, and it's about listening to their answer and asking why again and again and again, that at some point you start to get somewhere where you're going, oh, that's rooted in this, right? That's the piece that's essential. And then we've defined the real problem, the essential issue, the problem of practice that we need to hone in on. And so I think the best question is why.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for that, and because it isn't the thing to keep remembering is, as Pao was saying, it's not mine. It's not my problem, right? It's our issue. It's stuff for our school. And so what I need to really do is hear them. And if I'm going to hear them accurately, then what I'm going to do is mirror what they've said. So if they tell me that something is an issue, I'm going to repeat it and say, what I'm hearing you say is, and I'll repeat an aspect of what they've said, or I'll hone in on a particular word. And then I'll say, why do you think that's the case? And then I'll wait to hear what they say. And then whatever they say next, oh, why do you think that's the case, right? Why might that be? Why would they respond in that way? Why is it so challenging? Why are parents reacting like that? And then they start to tell me, oh, well, they're really worried about their kids. Oh, why would they be worried about their kids? That's right. And then we're going to talk about the fear, the worry, the anxiety around it. And we're getting to the root cause versus, okay, he got a bad grade on something, right? So we're going to get to the why. And that, I think, is how we define the problem.
The 5 whys is a great exercise, but it gets hard about the third one. Like you're answering really hard questions. It's not a game like whenever I was interviewing my schools about data, I was getting some really hard questions to answer. Because they weren't just like, oh, because we don't have time. It's like, well, why don't you have time? And it's like, because we have, too much of this to do. And then why? And when you start those 5 whys, I think that was a great answer, Steph. Like the best question to prepare is why, and to start mapping that out and really, really listening to your user or your interviewee or about why they're having this problem.
And going back to what Franco said, it's not what, right? We're not getting to an answer yet. We're not trying to fix it. Like I'm not sitting there hearing their questions going, oh, you should try this. It's really just hearing them out. And that is what that part is for.
There's another question here. Sorry, Sir Angelo, no, if
I know. I want to. Yeah. Does he have a question? Does he want to talk? He had so much to say at the start. Yeah, I loved hearing him.
Now, we have another question from our audience. This is from Sir Ernesto Caberte. Is design thinking just like discovery or deductive approach which is applicable even in modular distance learning or remote learning?
It's a great question.
That is a good question.
I don't know.
I mean, I would think absolutely. Design thinking is something you could totally do, remotely. Doesn't have to be face to face at all. And I think it's definitely something we could apply because in this crazy scenario where everybody's teaching him right now. But no, that was a really well worded question. But yeah, discovery, I think, could be different phases throughout design thinking. I think it's a word that applies for sure.
So part of that. Oh, I'm sorry, Franco.
Go ahead, Steph. Go ahead.
I was a part of an article that was entitled "Discover, Discuss, Demonstrate." That was recently published with Lainey Roll in Edutopia, and she wrote a book all on those 3 steps. And I would say that those 3 steps for sure apply to design thinking. And so her steps that she goes through in her book, The Evolving Learner, that it's really an overview of the process where you could stick in design thinking into each of those parts, right? Like discover is going to be the empathy piece and discovering the problem. And so that's what we basically did in that article was I was taking people through how I would apply it within projects and other things that I do in my classroom. And I have been virtual since March of last year, and we have been doing design thinking in our pathway the entire year. It is the only way that I know how to do my class at this point now, 10 years into this pathway. I can't do it any other way. I've had to redesign how I do design thinking in a virtual space, right? I've had to think and shift in the implementation of those projects, perhaps like the way that they share certain things out or how they conduct their interviews, right? Are they doing things in groups? Are they seeing what we did in one of our recent projects was everybody went and conducted their own interview. And then they came back and shared out, and then they picked a person that they think would be representative of their team from one of those interviews. And that person became the user when we were doing, they were doing travel blogs. And so then they interviewed people about what would make for the best travel experiences. And then they came up with like a model person based on the 5 people that each of them interviewed. And that then propelled them forward. And so the rubric I used was based on what their team said. Each team had their own separate rubric. And it was based on what their group said their user needed. So then I was checking at the end in their travel blogs, did it contain those 5 elements that they said were most important, right? So you certainly can do it. You just have to rethink the way that you're implementing it, I think.
Correct. I agree. I agree with Bonnie and Steph. No, I think the Filipinos didn't realize that they're using design thinking because in the first place, when we entered modular setup, okay, we first collected data. We tried to understand if they have devices, what kind of internet connectivity they have. This kind of collection of data actually is one of the things that sets you into design thinking, understanding your users first. So many Filipinos actually already implement, as mentioned by Steph earlier. It's just that we didn't label it as design thinking, but we're doing design thinking in a way during this distance learning modality. Okay, Steph and Bonnie, I think we just one more question before we have before we proceed to your next part. Okay, this one is from Miss Angelina Carpio Reyes. Okay, Sir David, I'll ask your question later. I just address this one first. Okay? So when in the when in the ideate phase, will it involve only those who are experiencing the problem, or even those who are not affected by the problem but may have ideas to contribute?
What do you think, Bonnie or Angela? What do you think? That's a great question. Any
I mean, I
ideas?
think that depends on your class, and how you wanted to work it, I think like that maybe the ideate this part, like what you're talking about maybe would be like the feedback portion. Because like whenever like we did some activities and we would have all our stuff on the wall and everybody was able to walk around and like give feedback on our ideas and like that collaboration phase. And like feedback. So yeah, I mean that definitely I think ideating could involve it doesn't just have to be one group, and could build on lots of people and the
Yeah.
ideas of lots.
And ideating is typically done when, like, we were doing it rapidly. So
Yeah.
usually it involves some sort of time constraint, and that's purposeful because people will get trapped in this idea of like,
Yeah.
then they'll start to
I
question.
don't like that feeling, but
I
just me.
know. I
I
don't know that
know, I
anybody
know.
loves it, but
I
it
don't
does
love it.
propel you forward. It is intended to be something that is quick because you aren't supposed to be judging your own answers at that point.
Mhm.
So, so usually when you ideate, you do it yourself. Everybody puts their ideas down. And then if it was in a collaborative team, like you're not just coming up with your own piece, you could do it aloud. You just have to work with your group, especially with students and adults, to not say a word when somebody says an idea. There is no judgment, good or bad. Like you don't
Oh,
tell
that's so
it.
hard.
And it's really hard because I will
I
do
taught
things
middle
like,
school. They can't do it. They can't do
yeah,
it.
right? I would do things like, even that is a judgment, right? That would say
Yeah.
to somebody, I like that idea. And if I don't do that for somebody else, it says I don't like that one. So it's retraining you on how to just take yourself out of it, hear every idea, write it all down, and then we talk through them. Because perhaps there was something that was like an off the wall thing that then launches somebody else's great idea that moves us forward. But you have to decide, do you want to do it where everybody has a time to come up with theirs, perhaps in a quiet or with music, and then you share them? Or do you want to do it collaboratively? You really have to think about the voices in the space and what you're seeking, I think, from your class or your group.
Love it.
Yes. Admins, you have something to share before we turn the floor back to Bonnie and Steph for the second part of their session? Or can we proceed already? Okay, so I think there are no comments or questions from our admin as well. So Bonnie and Steph will give you back the floor for the second part of the session for this afternoon.
Okay, you can pop in at any time. We like having you
Yes.
on.
Yes.
Yeah,
No, it's great.
it's way
We talk
fun.
all the time. No, so the next, like we said, next portion, we kind of wanted to focus more like on the classroom teacher. I taught middle school for a long time, but right now I just do like tech and support teachers. So we definitely, I know that's one of the most important things for classroom teachers, though. How does it apply to my world? Because your classroom is your domain, is your bubble. So these are 4 really, really great resources. The design thinking playbook we talked about. Solve in Time, which is a resource. Steph's going to tell you more about it. She's also working very closely and presenting on it. What, like next week? What are you presenting on that?
Yeah, we're doing a session. Good.
Design thinking specifically in the classroom, and then launch using design thinking to boost creativity. And you can see how this would boost creativity.
Yep. And so the design thinking in the classroom one, there are so many out there, but if you are an elementary person, that one is helpful. I'm high school, but it was written by a fellow innovator, and he's at a K through 8 school. So if you're elementary or middle level,
David Lee's book.
yes, that's David's book. Yeah.
Yes.
So, and then the
Yeah,
Solve in Time will be using the digital piece, but that one it's a great resource. And it takes and it gamifies. So all the questions that we were asking, like it has it on cards if you were physically in the room, but we're going to show you a digital version as we get there.
Right. So Steph graciously gave us all of the resources And it's a public folder, correct?
Yeah, it's a public folder. It's just not, I think if you don't go to the conference, it's not a thing that's easy to find, but it is a public folder for anybody and it's fully free. Yes.
Surprisingly, the Bitly Stanford folder, not taken.
Good job, Bonnie.
So, if you want access to these documents, do I need to pull that up? I don't think I need to pull it up.
I think you're good.
But if you want to access all these documents, you can go right here. I'll type it in the chat too, to this bit.ly, bit.ly/Stanford folder. Because it's from the Stanford Design School. You can have access to all the resources we're about to talk about. All right.
Okay, so this next part, so this is, if this helps you, we're not going to play it right now, but this is a video that I used with my students. So if you're trying to figure out, okay, how can I introduce design thinking to my class? I did what Bonnie and I modeled at the start with my students, but we were redesigning it. It's also in that Stanford folder. It's called Redesign the Morning Routine, as I mentioned at the start. So we did that as one of our first things for the first day of the first or second day of school. And students did that. We also did things where they were building stuff, like it was all active pieces. So they were interviewing people and they were designing things. And it was so fun when I look back at those pictures. And then we talked through the process. So the next class, we actually played this before we were launching into our first project to help them understand the process of design thinking and apply it to, oh, that's why we did what we did before. That's what we were doing. And now we're going to apply it to our learning in our first project. So this video, it's maybe like 3 minutes. It's great. And it'll guide them through what design thinking is. And then after that, I would do the next slide that was in here that then asked them questions about that. So this was the actual slide that we used in my classroom. We were using Pear Deck and I said, so what's the purpose of design thinking and why do we use it in this pathway? And then I had them kind of reframe and say it back. And then I knew we were, okay, now we can actually move forward and do something with it. And so these next pieces are going to show you what.
And you use this with virtual students, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is what we did. This is what I did in September of this year, of this school year. Yeah. Our school year goes from August to June. So, yeah. So then I took them through the same thing as you. We talked it through. We talked through all of the phases. But my students, as I mentioned at the start, they were writing travel blogs. So we read the Odyssey and they were creating. This was probably when I talk about projects, our projects become more and more authentic as the year goes on. But in the beginning, when they're getting their feet wet, we do what's called the fake reel project. Where it's still a real thing. They're writing a travel blog and it's connected to a travel company. But is that travel company going to actually have people go on their trip that they designed? Probably not, right? But we brought in travel experts and other people. So what we asked them was a how might we question, which we'll get to soon. How might we understand what traveling families want out of an unforgettable travel experience? And then they had to figure out, okay, what would help me better understand that? And then they said, you know what, I should probably, if I'm following design thinking, interview people who've been travelers. And then we even asked them, who would make the best person to ask? And before we even begin, why would we want to understand this? How will it help you? What's it going to help your team do? And where are you going to go with this? So we just talked.
I feel like when I was younger, we always used to hear, I don't know if this is a universal learning term, used to say the scientific method a lot. And I feel like this is the scientific method for everything else. The same kind of process. They just made it where it applies to the rest of the world.
It totally is. You are 100% right.
Yeah. All right. Oh, you have Post-its.
That's so cute. You know that I didn't even realize those were Post-its now. Oh, Bonnie teaching me. Okay, so when we talked before, and I don't know if you remember doing this, Bonnie, when we did had to make a user profile. Do you remember doing that?
I most certainly did. Yes.
So I don't know if you want to take them through this part of it, what you do during the user profile part. Do you remember how we did that?
I mean, I did, because my user, but my user was somebody very close to home. My user was a teacher. A teacher, and I really had to empathize with all of their struggles. Personally, I come from like a long line of teachers. I am not the only teacher in my family. I am most of us that I have one of those like very large families with tons of women who are all teachers, and education is our life. So my user, part of me was a teacher and part of it was like a family member or a friend or somebody who was just drowning in all of these things that I could see them drowning in. But at the same time, like, I had to work on not projecting what I thought the problem was, like their lack of tech skills, and actually like trying to listen to what the user said the problem was. Because I could be like, we need to learn how to use Google Sheets that will solve all your problems. That's not the case. Like, there are other reasons.
So then when you come back to the class or you come back to your team, right, you're presenting the profile. And so it might be that, at least for my students, right, they would say, my aunt so-and-so is a 48-year-old mother of 3 who works in, right, who is a teacher, whatever it might be, that is the profession. And we're going to get the profile of the user before we even start to understand the kind of travel experience that they would seek, right? And when we think about who you interview, somebody perhaps who is 40 and has 3 kids might want a very different travel experience than somebody who is 16 or somebody who is 85. And it might be about life experience. It might be about where they are, what they're seeking out of that experience. And so we talked about figuring out, who are you marketing to and what is going to make the most sense? So who's your user? And so they came up with their profile. And then the next one, after they came up with that profile, then we moved to, we also had to talk about, before we went into that, I probably should switch these, but knowing how to interview them. So someone was asking before, like, how do you know the questions? We did that as a class. Like we help the students develop those questions. I don't give them a list. And so they come up with the best questions, and then they came up with 3 to 5 that would let people talk. And they listed them out. They talked them through with their team. They got feedback on them from me and from their team. And then they conducted their interviews.
But I really like the how might we, and using that, like I said, in all aspects of teaching, but getting students to start using that terminology regularly, because it just really brings out thinking.
So it reframes, right? Then you get a point of view statement, and that includes a bit about the user, and then you get also like, what are they seeking? So it's no longer just like, what is their problem, but it's what do they need based on that, right? So you're outlining the need and why they need it, like what it is that they value. But maybe we'll move through so then we can get them to actually getting to do some of these, I think. But these are all here for you. Yeah, go right ahead. Okay. So this is, if you go to solveintime.com, which I highly recommend, it's where you can get, I don't work for D. D made these cards. He's amazing. But you can get the physical cards. But he also, if you sign up, he has like a, I don't know what you call it, like a newsletter group. If you sign up there, if you just put your email in to get on the mailing list, you get access to these slides. I only put in the picture of them because he sends them out once you have access to stuff. And the slide deck allows you to do a digital version. So those of us that are virtual, what you end up doing is it lets you like click on, if you go to the next one, it'll show you, it lets you click on certain things in a virtual setting in a slide deck. And it lets you start to go, okay, well, what's the problem? And you click there and it reveals a question that helps them either talk it through or write on the slide. And like these are on the other side of it. And it moves you to certain slides. It moves you through how you then display it. So it's awesome. And I can't recommend it enough. And then we wanted to show you a couple things from Stanford as well. When you're actually interviewing people, right? You're interviewing people to get a human-centered perspective that is inclusive and actionable. And they call that an aspirational interview, an aspiration interview when you, right? And so when you look at these, you're going to end up coming up with something where you might start to say things like, I want to now learn, or I want to know this. And then we're going to show you how that's a little bit different than how you frame it a little bit later. So
yes, and all these guidelines are in the folder. I'm going to drop that in the chat again. But like, I definitely think this is, you know, how we can, like, you would use with the students in the beginning of the year, you know, your next year, mapping out what they want to achieve, or like on specific projects.
Right. Yeah. It's
Love
like,
it, love it.
what's a goal, right? Or what's
Mhm.
what's a piece. So I want to use design thinking to help my students think more critically about the world, right? You're making a statement, right? About what you want,
Mhm.
where you want to go. It's not an answer yet, but it's like what you hope to achieve. And so we've put a few of these in here for you, to think about the difference between saying something as an aspiration and then a how might we statement. So, right, it's more of a here's what I want, here's what I desire. And then maybe we'll move them to the how that changes from the how might we statement. So all of these start with I, right? You're coming up with what you want or what you hope to do. I want to do this. I want to be this. I want to get here. I want to change this. And then when we move to a how might we statement, it's really more of like a calling. It's an asking.
Yeah.
It's a, right? So the next one, I don't know how you, like, this is my favorite thing, Bonnie. I love it. But then we shift it to a question, right? I don't know. How do you feel about that process, Bonnie?
What do you mean?
How might we, like, making it, turning it into a question? Were you able to come up with yours easily when you needed to come up with your how might we?
Yeah, I did. I think the phrasing helped me remember, though, that it's like we said, like, we, you know, the moderators completely were explained so well that and it makes you remember that it's not just your problem. When you keep saying how might we, it reinforces that idea that this is a collective issue. You know, in your this is a collective problem solving. Definitely.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it was interesting. Like, my how might we changed a lot. And there's some pieces in here that help you. So you'll notice the how might we statements are things I use to introduce projects to my students. They also they write then their own how might we before they move forward with their project. And that comes out of framing after the empathy interview. Right. It's like prior to them prototyping something, if you're really doing a project of length or detail, and they're really trying to figure out, they're honing in on the problem and the real question that they have about that problem. So I ended up honing in on how might we shift education to being more collaborative and less competitive. And it is what has guided me to being in, like, groups about and creating global GG with all of you, right? It is what has moved me forward.
I didn't realize that was yours. You're specifically, like, said no competition, because I know she doesn't like competition. That is not her thing. I didn't know your how might. That's so cute.
It wasn't that was not when I went to the academy. It wasn't about that at all. But after, when I shifted my project, I wrote a new how might we statement.
If we had a board and it had a bunch of how might we statements, I think I would pick that one. That was Steph's.
Thanks. So we wanted to know, I know we've done a lot of talking, and we wanted to know other people's potential how might we's. And so I think on the next slide.
I just dropped it in the chat.
You're amazing. Okay.
Yeah, I just dropped in the chat. bit.ly/StephRocks42. So we have a Padlet. It's 42 is the answer. So we have a Padlet here, and we just wanted to read your how might we statements. I mean, we can pull them up on the screen, but yeah, so I'm going to put it in the chat again, bit.ly/StephRocks42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42. 42.
and I don't, if you have not used a Padlet before, I don't know if we want to pull it up or show people, but you just go, there's a bottom little plus on the, and you could type in your own how might we statement. And so what we would love to know is, what are some things that you are trying to work on? What is your how might we? And then we have a website that can also help you called, I think it's on the next slide, Bonnie. Is it the fourth word?
Yes.
Leslie Altman introduced me to this website.
Yes.
And, I couldn't believe I didn't have it for so long. But when you think about what's coming next in that statement, how might we, and whatever word you put next, oh my goodness, right? That helps you really think about, like, how might we shift? How might we inspire? Like, it's going to change the way that you pursue whatever it is that's your question. How might we develop is very different than how might we refine or how might we repurpose, right? And so even thinking about the words that you're using to write a question change the way that you ask that question.
Yeah.
So what we were, and even if, oh yeah, the link, I don't know if it's coming up when you type it. So I'm wondering if we put it here in the private comments, maybe maybe it's because we are not the admins, I think, Bonnie.
Oh yeah, it doesn't love whenever you do. You might have to put it on the
S,
screen.
right? Steph Rocks. Is that what I get to say out loud? 42.
bit.ly/StephRocks42.
Okay. So maybe if you don't mind, Franco or Angelo or Pau, putting that in the chat, that would be amazing.
I'm gonna put it.
I put it in our chat there, so hopefully it can be there.
I'll put it on the screen right here.
Okay. So if you want to jump onto that Padlet, yay! All right. You just click the plus button, and when you click the plus, you'll then start to type in. And if you type in a how might we, maybe we won't, depending on timing, we could start to talk through some of those just like we would. And we could even give some feedback if people have some. Is it a how might we that might be
we have
about
some people putting
classroom?
some things on here.
I love it. Okay. Aww. Yes. And maybe we keep that fourth word up there to help them also think through, like, how you actually, how might we transform what? What are we wanting to transform? I love it.
Yes.
And so I would think about, what is it that you might want to, that you might want to do? It could even be a how might we for a project that you're thinking about. How might we make digital transformation accessible to everyone, everywhere, and on any budget? I love it. Thank you, Abid. I like it so much.
I know budgets. Budgets are no fun.
How might we offer teaching and learning opportunities that are relevant? Oh, these are good. These are good. Yes, Franco.
You're right. I did put a slide. I did have a slide for that.
It's okay. You're all good.
There it is. And I have a QR code.
Ooh, how might we make, okay, I love this. Okay, how might we make everything open for all? I would wonder, like, what is the everything? What is that?
Yes.
Like, that would probably be my question. Oh, I don't know if you want to, should we project these? They're so good. I love seeing these.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll have to turn off the slides.
Here, I'll share them. Here, share screen.
Here, I got it.
You got it? You're a pro.
Because I'm sharing a tab, so we're just done with the slides.
You're so good. Okay. Is it showing them? I don't see them, Bonnie. There we go. Look at that. Look at that. Technology. Yeah. Okay. How might we encourage teachers? Oh, I want to know. Yes, this is good, Pal. Yes. How might we encourage teachers to undergo, oh, what a good question, the design thinking process, even if it might take time? Ooh, that is a good question. Pow.
That is a good one.
That was good. That was good. How might we better address emotion and psychological aspects of...
Is that Franco? Because he's been on that, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it. He's been wondering how we can support teachers. Socio-emotional, like all that stuff. I'm here for it.
Okay. I can't give an answer, but we should connect him with some of the other innovators that we know who are working on that. If that is, these are so good. These are so good.
I know.
And usually what I do as students develop their how might we's, or as we as educators or staff is, I mean, you all, it feels like we're dealing with professional how might we writers here, but it really is, it's really looking at each word and starting to think about, is that necessary? Does that ask the question that you are intending? Does that hit people in the way that it actually helps frame what you are wanting to frame? And so we're getting some great ones. It was Jerome. Okay. How might we address, here we go. Oh, look, we're getting more. How might we narrow down the digital divide to provide equal education opportunities to the underprivileged learners? Okay. So I love this one. One of the questions I likely might ask is, so we have a focus here, right? We're focused on the digital divide. And probably if I was working on that one, I might ask things like, why is the focus specifically on the digital divide? Will that continue to be the focus if and when Corona is over, right? Like starting to just weed out the real reason why the focus is there. Did you think this was always a problem even before? Things like that. But I love
and then,
it.
Franco, was that your original? Because the first time I met with him, he talked about relevant and customized to the needs of teachers. I think that was his original how might we statement. Or at least the one he started this this platform with. Because that was when the first time we met, he talked about like custom, like relevant and customized. Because there's so many resources out there. Like what like you have to make it relevant. No, totally.
Okay, I'm going to talk teacher Gab Educado, I think. I'm making sure I'm saying it right. Please correct me. I don't know how you could, but please correct me. Okay, in the chat. My how might we statement, how might we develop an inclusive platform where teachers can create connection, share their best practices, and amplify their passions. Oh, wait, where did it go?
Wow.
For teaching despite the pandemic. Okay, I love this one. There's only one piece of feedback that I would give you is you've put a solution inside your how might we without maybe realizing it. So you said develop an inclusive platform. So the platform piece is almost a solution. You've already geared it. And what usually happens during this stage is going like, maybe it doesn't have to be a platform. I mean, it could end up being that. But the idea is not to box that in. So it might just end up being, how might we develop inclusive connections, share best practices, right? And then your solution ends up being a platform. Platform's pretty open, but I assumed that there might be an answer there within you.
Yeah, and if anybody is interested in applying to the Google Innovator program academies later, whenever they announce them, the number one way to not get in is to put any kind of hint of a solution in your how might we.
These are so good.
I know. Look at this one. How might we coordinate leadership efforts to provide relevant, accessible, quality education?
So good.
What a question.
Yeah. Oh, the coordinate, right? Like that.
Yes, right? Like that's the part. Like there are a bunch of people working, but how can we all work together?
How do we all work together? Yeah, that's at the heart of it. I love that. Okay. And then getting to this, like, how might we use design thinking as a tool to find the answer, or to we might be getting about like, how do we do this during hybrid? I think is what we're getting at, right?
Yeah.
Of what is the best learning strategy for a hybrid environment. So the how might we is on how do we use design thinking to better do stuff for hybrid. I love that. I love that, because what you've then done is, depending on where you are in your school year, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do, right? In 2 weeks, I'm working, my whole staff is returning. And that's what everybody is asking. Like, How do we do this and do it well and do it better? And when we're freaking out about it. And that is the question that I am asking all of the teachers. And as they are prototyping in these first few weeks, where we are slowly phasing
They
that
are
in,
prototyping.
right? Then
Yeah.
I'm writing it in our newsletter. We're giving each other feedback on it. Then we're actually like testing it out and we're doing it. And then we're going to get more feedback and try it again. Like, such a good question. And you just want to make sure that your methodology matches that brilliance of a How Might We.
It's so good.
So good.
That was our last slide.
That was our
It
last
was just
slide.
the
We
How
could keep-
Might Me. So
I love
yeah,
these.
this was so good. You guys are. I stand by what I said in the beginning. I feel like education in the Philippines is just like legit. It is. I mean, you guys are a part of such something you should be so proud of, because there's so many great leaders and so much forward thinking coming out of the Philippines.
I love it. Oh, I'm thinking that our amazing admins here copied some that were coming in on the YouTube chat, which is awesome too, so that they're all still
They're so
housed
clever.
here. They're so good. So good.
I know. And this Padlet, I'm not going to go and delete it or anything.
No.
So, if you are like, oh, remember, it's Steph Rocks and then 42.
Oh, Bonnie.
I really think Steph Rocks is available. So I really was like, all right, I'm going to make a Steph Rocks website now because that Bitly's available.
You know, I didn't make that for myself. That was just so nice of Bonnie. Oh my goodness. Okay.
This is great.
How might we have a truly humanistic education, even if our diverse teaching philosophies are affect our oh my gosh. Whoever you are deep, and I like you a lot. I like it so much. And what's interesting, right, is there are other processes that you can go through with the How Might We statements that might help people too. And those, they're linked in all the Stanford stuff. And we went through them at the academy. So you might ask the question and then you might have to reframe it. So perhaps you start to think about it and then you're like, oh, they even ask you before you start to reframe it. Reframe it through a lens where you're looking at it as if there were no barriers, or reframe it as if you see some of those barriers, those obstacles as bonuses, right? They ask you to like think things through in a different way as you frame that, because what ends up happening if we continue to think about it through with the barriers in place, you might not actually ideate as big as you could if you let those go. We know that they still exist, but right, one how might we be might we that you might want to write down, you might not end up going with it, is one as if those didn't. And then what you might end up looking at is how do we remove those, right? Like, so it starts to help you reframe even the way that you look at issues. Some of them for sure might not be possible right now. Maybe that's the big 10x dream. And then your current how might we is where you are right now. But these just make me happy. I could sit in this all day, Bonnie.
I know. Yeah. But that was the end of the slides we had. I mean, we're just all learning together. So I don't know if the moderators want to come on and kind of wrap it up. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, or you want to share your ideas on some of these, whatever you'd like, you know?
Thank you, Bonnie. Indeed, I saw a lot of interesting, great ideas. Actually, educator camp, it's one of the most challenging, perhaps, and yet fulfilling part of the program, the development of how might we questions. Well, for one, it's a little difficult because it challenges some conventions. As mentioned by Steph, you to step outside of your how you usually do things. It begs you to question once again how to approach a particular problem or situation, etc. That's why I also love, I personally love as well, the how might me. But if there's a favorite, what I like really, Steph and Bonnie, was the 10 times solution. See that when you're thinking about brainstorming, you do not put limits to it. You go as far, as high, as deep, and as creative or as crazy, as we put it, in the innovators camp in terms of solution thinking of solutions to drive ideas, because sometimes no I think when we try to like put like criticisms right away while the ideas are developing, we might have missed a great idea along the way. So that's Admin, any thoughts or ideas? There are a lot of questions, by the way, Bonnie and Steph, audience. No? So, teachers, please do repost your questions right away, right now. For those who have posted their questions earlier, during the intercession earlier, please do repost your questions so we could entertain it. But anyway, for now, admins, Sir Jambi, Teacher Pao, Sir Angelo, any thoughts, ideas, okay? So far for the session.
Hello. Yes. Good afternoon again. All right. So, can I be heard? Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. So, I wrote there in the Padlet, my question on how might we, encourage teachers to still use design thinking even if it takes time. And I see a
Mhm.
comment here in the YouTube page from Ms. Teresa Heredia. She also said time element is a crucial thing to consider in employing design thinking as a method or strategy in the teaching and learning process. And everything now that we are doing, it's kind of a bit fast paced. So how do we actually strike a balance, or how do we become successful in this design thinking process? That's just a thought.
Oh yeah, I don't have answers. Yeah, I mean, that's not what we do. Like I don't,
I have a few, but if others, I'm happy
yeah.
to listen to. Um, but for ours, I think part of it entails a reframing of the way that you think about how content is delivered.
Yeah.
So it's a bigger piece. So
I
when
think
I
it
think of
involves leadership
yeah,
too.
mhm.
You have to have an admin that's on board with it not looking like the curriculum. I don't know what word you guys use in art. It's like, oh, it's like the curriculum or the program or whatever. And it's not going to match that scripted curriculum. So it's got to
But
come
I
from.
would say, right, so if you are embarking on something that involves design thinking, I personally think, depending on the grade level or the way that you're embarking on it, you begin by going, all right, I want to envision one project. Like it doesn't mean that you're going to just like throw everything out that you're doing, but is there something that I currently am teaching? If I'm science, whatever your like, my subject matter is English, but we weave in English, science, and history into our projects, so they're connected. So whatever it is that is your subject or your grade level, right? That what is one piece that perhaps adding design thinking could help students really take it to the next level? And it's about not giving them all the content and then saying, now we're going to do a project with it. It's about them learning the content through the process of whatever project you're doing. And that is going to be the shift. So it kind of flips what you would normally, what most people would do at the end of saying, like, well, now show me what you've learned after I've taught you this in a project. You say, we're starting with the framework of the project, and how do you think we should solve this problem? It's about asking them about how they would solve it, and they come up with solutions. So all their end results might look different because of who they interviewed, where they went, but they've still gained the content along the way. You've fed them pieces. So in my class, we call those workshops, right? So if we're needing to do writing, we're still doing writing, we're still doing reading, but it's in the coursework towards a goal of a project. But you need to give them enough things within whatever it is that they need to, it necessitates a question. So then they're going to go, okay, well, for this next step of my project, I need to learn how to do this. Okay, we need a workshop on that then, right? We'll need a workshop on this piece of the scientific method so that you can go forward with whatever, right? Or we need you're not sure how to do this specific type of research and history, oh, let's have a workshop on that, right? So it's about helping, as all great teachers do, right? You're feeding them enough that then they ask the right question, so then you get to do the teaching that you needed to do. It's just, being circular a little bit about it. But I actually don't think, in my time, it does take time, but I think if you reframe the way that you're teaching it, it can still follow, and you actually get in more because the students will go deeper because they care about the content.
Would you say, Steph, like people have to trust the process? Because you're going to have to watch like students struggle a little, and you might feel like you're wasting time because you're like, God, you got it wrong. Like, I'm a terrible math teacher. We learned from when we went virtual, because my daughter, I was like, why don't you know this answer? Like, I don't know. I can't teach you how to know it. Like, it was like, oh, I'm done with this math. And, but like watching kids struggle and not feeling like that's a waste of time.
Well, I mean, part of it is also then students reframing that struggle to go like, right? So much of it is the growth mindset piece of, well, this means I'm learning, right? It means I'm growing. If it was easy, then we're not learning anything, right? Like, what am I teaching you if it's easy? And that's the piece that I think is really hard, and that we tell our parents at the start of the pathway is, your kids are going to struggle, but that's good. And like, it means it's worthy work, and helping them to feel
work.
Good
I love that. Love that.
Personally, I agree with Steph, no? And she mentioned about parents. Okay, so teachers, no? When we embrace design thinking as well, no? When we try to adapt this into our curriculum, we really also have to engage our parents. They have to know, because they'll be shocked on how messy it can get. I like how Steph actually started the session earlier, that design thinking is messy process. I think, no, it speaks about life. Life is messy. That's exactly what they're going to encounter when they go out of school, and that's what design thinking is preparing them for, no, to solve problems the way it should be solved. Okay? So it's going to really be messy, but once you get be more comfortable with it, it settles down. It becomes more organized in a way, all throughout. No, so it takes a lot. No, administration, teachers, students, parents, okay, to be on board of the process if we really want to adapt the idea of design thinking to our curriculum. But I think, Steph and Bonnie, no, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, even if you do not fully adapt design thinking in a full blown scale, no, by principle, actually, you'll pick up a lot of things from design thinking. Number one, empathy. Okay, please, the teachers, when we design assessments, when we design instruction, always think about your students. I think that's one of the best lessons that design thinking teaches us. Okay, second is that by principle, design thinking teaches you that there's no one way of solving things. No, things could be solved in multiple, multi-layered, multi-dimensional ways. Okay, and you can always go back and forth. No, you can fail, go back, retest. So it's not like my instruction is wrong, my assessment is invalid, I fail as a teacher. So that's something like that. No? Something that we learn from design things. So that's because maybe Steph and Bonnie, the concern of some teachers here, because we have so much restraint in terms of our content. The one Bonnie was mentioning earlier, our curriculum in the Philippines are packed with content. No? Actually, the pandemic served us a little good, because our government was forced to content audit. So even them, no, they realized that
Well,
there are
that
some
was good.
content. Yes, we're not
That's good.
thinking the pandemic to happen,
Oh.
but we're thankful that they get to realize that there is some content, no, in the prescribed curriculum, okay, standard curriculum, that can be do without, no, that we can like proceed with, even if we're not covering them, okay, because in the first place, we're in the digital age. No, information are like floating there. You can Google
Yes.
it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yes,
You have
right.
an encyclopedia in your pocket. Like, we don't Neil deGrasse Tyson, if you're familiar, he's the astrophysicist. He does Star Talk. And I heard him speak in New Orleans once, and he was talking about how teachers, our role has shifted to a curator. We're now curators of knowledge. Like, we are here to help guide students through all the mounds and mounds of information out there to teach them how to find out what's relevant, what's incorrect. Because now students have everything in their pocket, and we have to teach them how to navigate it. And maybe what he meant was design thinking. Just saying.
Franco, you're muted still.
Oh no.
Are others hearing Franco? Oh no, his sound went out.
Hello. I was actually just going to say that you don't have audio.
He'll get there.
Well, this was just amazing. This was a great way
really
to spend my
was.
Friday night. It really was a good experience. Me and Steph go on air all the time, so
I was happy to be here with you, Bonnie. And it was wonderful to meet each of you. I don't know, making sure Franco's okay. And then Angelo, your insight at the start, oh my goodness. Like when you were talking about design thinking, my first thought was he could just do this session right now.
Yeah,
like, it was
right.
So, yeah. Do you do things in your do you do things with design thinking in your space?
I think I'm one of those who feel like I'm doing it, but not labeling it as design thinking. But I agree with Sir Franco, the rest of the administrators, that we in a way are design thinking already, this particular process, especially in this pandemic. And maybe to follow what Sir Franco have mentioned, we will not be able to really embrace the full-blown design thinking process. There are a lot of things that we can learn. And for me personally, I really learned about it's a bad thing, especially in design thinking. And as I was reading through the comments, the many comments, I realized that one thing that we might miss out is that when we think of mistakes, it's just there's a tendency for us to throw it out. It's a mistake, so we do it again. We create a new one to address the problem, and yet we might find ourselves that some of the solutions that we might think that is our mistakes can actually be the solution to other problems, not necessarily the problems that we are facing, but maybe another problem that can be a good direction for a new set of what might be. So the things that the things that it might be a way for us to build it up. So that's what I like about the discussion also, the building up of one particular aspect into another. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a mistake, but it's actually a way for us to go further with education. And I think that's a challenge especially in the Philippines, because again, as what mentioned by Sir Franco, there might be some problems with the content. And yes, we don't want the pandemic to be the reason for us to really audit and check our things. But at the same time, it paved the way for us to be more discerning of the things that we will be teaching, and at the same time, be more welcoming with mistakes.
And I think based on like what Franco was mentioning, I think you could introduce it. You could do a slow rollout. It wouldn't have to be that you have to do a giant piece. You could use it as part of your introduction just to get them with methodology. But it could also be that with each thing, maybe you introduce one part of it. So maybe maybe then you've introduced them. If empathy is really what it's going to be a thematic element to your entire year, and you want to make sure it's in every piece, then you start with that. And maybe then the next time you go, you use an element from empathy, and then you bring in the next piece of actually starting to frame a problem. Like maybe you're not doing it the whole way.
Or maybe you just use to frame your lessons. Like maybe you choose it to reflect on your own practice. And, am I meeting the needs of my students? And then, a slow build into you don't want to rework your entire teaching and, throw away 20 years of teaching. But because some ladies got on a Saturday morning and were like, you should do this. You should do this is what you should do. So,
but
for sure.
I do think that the slow piece is really helpful. It also helps students and families and admin. It helps people start to digest it, right? So that was how, like, I know for us in our pathway, there were those of us that started it, and we reframed all of our projects right away because we were doing it as a pathway. But as we brought in new teachers for different grade levels, that was the advice that we gave them was, you're not going to change everything right away. Like you're coming in right now. So you're going to pick one project that's maybe, or like one unit that is like 3 or 4 units down. So we can sit and talk through it, and you can tell us your ideas and you'll get feedback on it. And we go through like a whole process together, and then they work on that one. And then what do you want to revamp for the next semester, for next, like, what's your next one that's going to be a goal? And we would, like, they're not alone in that process of reframing it or rethinking it through. And they might say like, oh, I really love when we get to teach this in biology, but I think it could be done in a way where it's actually solving a real world problem, or like they're meeting real people. And so I think part of it is, how do you bring in an authentic issue? And that might help you reframe it. So if we're studying this piece, like, what's going to make it applicable in the world around you? And that's how then you maybe bring in design thinking, because then it's going to involve talking to real people and prototyping something for a real place or a real business or a place down the street, right? So that to me feels doable. It still is doing your content, but we're asking an application of that then, right? And again, feeling like, I don't have to throw everything out, but I'm going to try this one thing. I'm going to see how it goes. And then next time I'm going to try something else.
Yep. Totally agree.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can't. Yes.
He's back.
Stefan, I agree with that. No, one of the things about design is that it makes your content more purposive. It puts the content in a proper place, in a proper continuum in terms of problem solving. It applies it in real life, authenticates it vis-a-vis actual situations that the students, perhaps, the community are experiencing, or even our society right now. Especially right now, for example, in the pandemic, this could actually be a very rich experience. Okay, go ahead, Sir Jambi, Teacher Pao.
All right. Okay. So from what I'm just taking it from what Steph mentioned, we have to start small. Start small, and then from there, I think we can develop if there's anything big that we want to try to solve, or where we want to really apply design thinking. One thing that I also caught my attention during the whole webinar was when Bonnie and Steph always mentioned about failing forward. I really love that part when you say you fail forward, because most of us, when we say failures, it ends up something negative, that there's really nothing, you're nowhere to go. But with that statement of failing forward, that provides hope. No, and for all of the teachers, for any aspect, actually, for any aspect, if you fail forward, that means you're on to something greater, you're on to something better.
You've
So I
learned
really
from
do
whatever that failure.
appreciate that. Yeah, I
Exactly.
really appreciate that. That will be my hashtag from now on. Fail forward.
Oh,
We'll do that. Hashtag fail forward. Go, Sir Jambi.
Hi, hello. Sorry, are we ending already? Okay. So, yeah, 3 things, or 3 reflections that I have about this afternoon's session. Number 1, yeah, it's true that perhaps many of our teachers have already been applying design thinking, or the concepts of design thinking, without them knowing. But there is, of course, always wisdom in labeling things, so that you are able to replicate it, so that you are able to evaluate it properly after. And then for my second statement, I'm sure everyone would agree that yes, it's such a grand web of problems that we have to try and solve. And we're all thinking, is design thinking the solution? Will it even work? Do we have time to do it, etc.? But we have to start somewhere. Eh, we accept that it's going to work. So even if we have to start within ourselves, within our homes, within our classes, and work our way outwards, then that's already an achievement for all of us. And finally, I'd like to think, I was thinking this whole time that perhaps Kaagapay teacher support is an output of design thinking, or continues to be an output of design thinking. um, we're not claiming that we're already the end product. We're not claiming that we've solved the problem, but we will continue to empathize. We will continue to find out what needs to be done. We know that time is not working in our favor. The situation is not working in our favor, but we continue to try. And for now, this is the design that works for everyone. So there you go.
So much for that, Sir Jambi. Siguro before we end our session, Steph and Bonnie, although there's still a lot of questions, but I think we just have don't much time to address all of them. But maybe a simple message, or like what would you like to say to the Filipino teachers amidst the pandemic, or what we're going through right now, and actually globally, not only in the Philippines?
I would say that design thinking is something, is like maybe one of the few things that you've heard about in this session that could really apply to whatever way you're having to teach. It's from somebody, this, my teachers went from full virtual to this hybrid scenario to full face to face and stuff. And if those of my teachers who are using these kinds of models had sustained continuity in their classrooms. Like, and this is like a framework that can support all the different ways that we're having to teach and learn right now. And it's really it's probably just fine tuning what you're already doing. And like Jambi said, which is such a great point, like, you're labeling it's a good thing, like defining it is a good thing. So I really liked that point. That was really spot on. So yeah, that's my takeaway, what he said.
I know every person that was here, I'm like, oh, they gave the best ones. I do think some of the benefits of design thinking are that you could certainly do it yourself, like individually, but you still need other people to interview, right? So it is about it being a collaborative process, so that whatever it is that you create applies to more of the world. And I think about that as being something that, from a teacher lens, from a student lens, from an admin lens, when we're thinking about wanting to have the most impact, right? And that it actually is meaningful. That to me is why design thinking is so powerful, is that it is something that is about the collaborative. It's not an individual process. I am a part of something, and I'm a part of something bigger than myself when I work on this. And that to me is like, oh, and if I really am working on this with other people, like our bounds are limitless here, because I continue to learn from everybody that is around me, from my teachers, from the space, from from everyone, from experts in the field. And I think that it changes the way that I look at problem solving, and tackling things. That problems are not things to be scared of, right? There are bigger challenges that should excite you. And they're like, I got my little postcard that said, right, fall in love with your problem. And I have become a person where I think I hold true to that. I try to anyway. It's hard sometimes, but it does help shift your perspective.
Fall in love with your problems. Okay. We have here in the Philippines, we say sana all, we fall in love. Thank you so much, Steph and Bonnie. But before we proceed on our last, before we bid goodbye, I'd like to first, of course, appreciate and acknowledge your presence here. here as our guest speakers. Okay, so we'd like to present this certificate of recognition. Okay, this certificate of recognition is awarded to Bonnie Chile for sharing her expertise and for her contribution.
Oh, thank
Speaker
you.
recently concluded webinar entitled Design Thinking, Teaching and Learning in the 21st Century. Sorry, 21st Century. Awarded on March 6, 2021. Signed yours truly by Franco Adun, Administrator, Joseph Angelo Santos, Administrator, and Angelo Malyar, Administrator. Of course, no, ito pa yung last template namin. So we haven't added yet our new Administrator for this template. But soon we'll be having her signature as well on our certificates. And of course, we also like to present the same certificate to Stephanie Rothstein for also joining us today, and contributing to this very engaging discussion. Okay, so Bonnie and Steph, we're very thankful. No, Bonnie, we appreciate. It's 4 a.m. right there. Also, it's
Oh, it's only like 2. I mean, still. No, I'm excited. I'm like I said, I was excited to be here. This was great, and I can just say again, like Steph, this is like I've learned so much from her because she's such an expert, and that's why when you said this, I was like, yeah, I'll talk about it, but I got somebody else too, because like I've tackled real world like problems with her, like whether it was like with people or like fusion and stuff. Steph's really good about being like, okay, well, why are we having this problem first? And I tend to jump to step 4 and like start coming up with solutions. And it's definitely like helped me, like even like interpersonal, like if you're running a big group of people and stuff, to stop and go like, why are we having this problem? And I'll always joke and I'll be like, that's a very Steph question. Look at me being all, thinking about it. But it really does help, like I said, with leadership. It's not just it's in all aspects.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. And from Bonnie and Steph would like to say goodbye now. No, for now. No, I hope that we could still
Yes.
see you again once again. No, again in here in Kaagapay Teacher Support. And on behalf of all the teachers from our community, we thank you for your time and your expertise in this session. Okay. So maraming in our language, maraming salamat, Bonnie and Steph.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. An absolute pleasure.
Yes. Whenever you'll have us back, for sure.
Okay. So, admin, kumusta? So,
That was another gold webinar. That I think,
Sir
teachers
Jambi,
will
Teacher
agree.
Pao, and Sir Angelo, para lang yung mga audience po natin din habang naghihintay kasi we're already went overtime. And thank you so much no for, alam niyo, so we apologize if we went overtime again, teachers. No, I think you appreciate the amount of content that we have to cover and the discussion. No? So I hope that the last 15 minutes of overtime is worth your time. No, okay. But while siguro Sir Jambi, Teacher Pao, and Sir Angelo discussing our thoughts and ideas, maybe I'd also share already the evaluation link para while they're evaluating, we could still address some of their questions, some of our thoughts as well to our audience. Okay. Let me just share, teachers, our evaluation link for this session. Please don't forget, teachers, that this is the basis of your certificate. So please make sure that you accomplish your evaluation. Okay. Please also take note of your emails para hindi po nagba-bounce back ang inyong certificate sa amin, as well as your names, teachers, no? Complete name po para po kasi that's going to be the one we're going to put in your certificates, okay? And I'm excited because our certificates are Jambi, okay, are professionally made, okay? As we have announced to Kaagapay, no, we've partnered with Balangkas Productions, okay? So all of our graphics now are professionally made, including our certificates. No? So hindi titipidin kahit po sa certificates. No? So Sir Jambi, Sir Jello, Teacher Pao, no? While we're still here and our teachers are evaluating. By the way, teachers, do let us know sa live chat natin if the link is working para I could do something about it if it's not working. Okay? So, Sir Jambi, Teacher Pao, Sir Angelo, any other thoughts, ma? Meron ba tayong mga naiwan? Baka meron pa tayong mga hindi nasabi at hindi tayo makakatulog mamaya sa pag hindi natin na-express yan.
Ako actually madami.
Dami pa, di ba? Ako sila personally,
Pinipigilan ko lang mag-share kasi sayang yung oras nila para
no?
mag-share ko.
Yes. Pero actually, may isa akong question kayo na gustong i-address kasi sabi niya din sa isang question niya kanina, hindi ko lang na-take note yung pangalan niya, no? Sabi niya is that, paano daw yung mga teachers that are reluctant, no? Kasi meron naman talaga tayong mga ganun, yung mga reluctant teachers na, ay, ayoko i-try yan kasi tried and tested na yung ginagawa ko before, eh. So, bakit pa ako lilipat o magpa-paradigm shift kung nag-work naman yung dati ko? So again, yung sabi ng teacher pa kanina, no, this will actually take time. You can't rush into it. Hindi siya pwedeng, sige, this school year, design thinking tayo sa lahat ng proseso natin. Okay? Or we'll implement design thinking. Hindi siya pwedeng ganun. Okay? So you'll have to also create discussions, no, with your teachers, with your students, with your parents, no, to let them understand and buy the idea. Okay, because if from the get-go, your teachers and your students and your parents are not on the same page with you, it will become problematic. No, it will not work. Okay, so it takes talaga the entire community to be able to implement design thinking. Okay, and siguro ako isa pa sa mga gusto ko i-highlight Sir Jambi, Sir Angela, Teacher Pao, no, design thinking kasi is not specific to a subject. Hindi rin siya specific about any aspect of education. Okay? Hindi siya specific, like, for example, design thinking pang assessment lang yan. Or design thinking pang instruction lang yan. Hindi siya ganun eh. Design thinking is applicable to all the processes in education. Okay? Kasi nga, it's all about how do you go about things. Okay? How do you design assessments? How do you design your lessons? How do you design your video lessons? Okay? Katulad nga, for example, no, Sir Jello, Sir Jambi, nung ginawa ko yung isang video sa YouTube channel natin, yung automating report card distribution system, that actually started from the teachers, no? Ano yung problema nila? Okay? At lagi nila sinasabi that ang hirap mag-distribute ng cards, no? Kasi you'll have to print them. Wala ka namang ibang digital unless bibili ka talaga ng mga platforms that allows you to distribute cards, no? For example, sa amin sa mga schools natin, no, we have a digitized automated distribution system, pero hindi lahat na may access, no? So I really have to go through sort of this design thinking process to be able to come up with a solution that's accessible to all. And gladly naman, we were able to come up and we were able to send that to our teachers, no? Yon. Okay.
Sir Franco,
Yes,
I
Teacher
saw
Pao.
that in relation to what you have been saying, no? I saw one comment here in YouTube. Miss Mary Lo Singson, she said, I like the idea of trusting the process, and it goes with taking the risks of making a mistake and eventually learning from the mistake and discover something new. So I think that that comment from her somehow summarizes this new idea, no? So for others it might be a novice idea, this design thinking process. But again, as Steph and Bonnie has mentioned, it's all about trusting the process. It will not be easy. It will take time, yes, but you really have to start small. No, start small, fail forward, look forward that there will be some change. No, and take the risk. I think that's about it. No, take the risk, even if we are too comfortable already with what we have been doing. It will bounce us back to the first step of design thinking, to empathize. Are your students really learning something, or where are they in your process of thinking how lessons would go? So I think that's very good. That's a very good comment from one of our viewers.
Ako na ba?
Go ahead, Sir Jambi. May mga, okay, go ahead lang po.
Ano? Um, alam nyo, masalimuot talaga. Ayan. Tanggap naman po nating lahat yun na hindi natin mababago ang mundo. Hindi natin mababago ang educational system. Definitely not overnight. baka nga not even in 10 years. Okay? Pero, uh, alam niyo po, 10, 20 years ago, yung mga tao who dared to try and change the system, ngayon naman po, nare-reap na natin kahit papaano yung mga benefits ng mga teachers na yun, ng mga guro na yun. Kasi yung problema natin sa educational system, hindi lang siya sa education pati siya sa buong society. Okay? Kumbaga, kahit mabago mo na yung educational system, pero ang tinatanggap pa rin na empleyado ng mga, for example, ng mga kumpanya ay hindi hindi nakabase sa natutunan ng bata or sa skills ng bata, pero nakabase sa school na pinanggalingan niya, baliwala, 'di ba? Pero in the past 2 weeks kasi I've been attending parang ang tawag namin Big Brother. Ito yung we have alumni na bumabalik and they get to talk to our students now. Alam niyo iba ng kahit papaano may mga tao na pala na iba mag-isip ngayon na there are companies who no longer look at your where the school that you came from. May mga companies na who would care less kung ilang beses kang bumagsak sa isang subject. Okay? Sometimes pa nga ang tingin nila doon, you're persistent. Okay? Hindi ka nag-give up. Okay? So, at dahil yun doon sa mga teachers from 20 years ago na sinubukan nilang baguhin yung system. So, tayo ngayon, palagi namin tong sinasabi, hindi naman talaga kami nagpapasalamat pero i-grab natin siguro yung opportunity na nandito tayo sa pagkakataon na pwede tayong gumawa ng mga changes and everyone will understand. So, nandito tayo sa pandemya, lahat tayo, parang lahat nga ngayon, pare-pareho ng pinanggagalingan. Siguro iba-iba ng resources, pero wala, kahit yung mga the biggest private schools, hindi rin talaga nila alam yung ginagawa nila at the beginning of all this. So, i-grab natin yung opportunity na to. Why not give design thinking a try? We might not live to see yung effect, yung full effect ng gagawin natin. Pero ganoon naman yung buhay, 'di ba? You just have to believe, 'di ba? That someday hindi man para sa pero para sa future generation, it will be better. Thank you.
Yun. Dami talagang words of wisdom ni Sir Jambi at ni Miss Pau. Grabe. So, power.
Power.
Power. Okay. Sa akin, to build up, kasi nga isa sa mga natutunan ko dito sa webinar is building up on what was already been given, and I agree. Sabi nga, nandito tayo. Hindi naman natin, tulad ng inano namin nila Sir Franco, Sir Jambi, at ni Miss Pau, hindi naman natin sinasabi na dahil sa pandemic na to, yun, na we're grateful for it, but it gives us an opportunity to do something new, to try something new, to go beyond, not only because we want to, but sometimes we are forced to. Diba? Nandun tayo sa sitwasyon na wala naman kailangan natin gawin to. Siguro ako, I will go naman to the side of us teachers, as educators, as parents, as administrators. It's nakakatakot siya. Nakakatakot yung pagbabago. Nakakatakot, especially when we are already in a comfort zone. But if we will not move, we will not go out of the comfort zone, we will be left behind, because this is a fast phase. Kasi nga, tuloy-tuloy siya. Hindi naman natin siya mapipigilan. Ng pagbabago hindi mapipigilan. It always starts with our openness, the things that is happening, whether the will, it's okay. Kasi feel like challenges ko personally, or mag-try. Kasi kung i-reframe in terms of failing, not as a bad thing, but something as a opportunity, something that we can learn from, then maybe it's a good start. Small, start small. Hindi naman kaya agad-agad baguhin. Maganda pero it takes a village for us to raise all of us to make sure that the learning, the education system will be better. And I like what Sir Jambia mentioned, para tayong nagtatanim. Diba? Pag nagtatanim tayo, minsan hindi naman natin alam kung kailan siya tutubo, kung tutubo ba siya. But it doesn't stop us from planting. And I think this kind of webinar, this kind of processes, this kind of learning, it may be new to us, it may be difficult, it will take time, but rest assured that whatever will be the fruit of it, okay, meron na maidudulot sa atin. Maganda man o mas maganda man kaysa sa mga pinaplano pa natin. And dagdagan ko nung sinabi ni Miss Pao, nung hashtag niya, falling forward. Siguro as a kaagapay teacher support, let's fail forward together. So magandang sama-sama tayong tumingin sa bukas ng hindi takot. Kahit takot tayo, pero we move forward. We move forward in that particular direction.
Actually, sabi nga namin, pwede na rin mag-webinar ulit, no? Entirely. Pero maraming salamat, admins, for your insights, no? And teachers, again, maraming salamat for today, and we hope to see you on our next session on Saturday. That will be on managing distance learning. Learning, a guide for parents, no? So we'll be having Dr. Queen Ali Chua. So it's for the parents, teachers, no? Please do invite your parents po, no? Because this will solidify, no, our partnership with our parents, no? If we are
Correct.
equipped teachers, no? If we're equipping you with all of these things, we're training you, we're sending you, no, all of these trainings, you also have to equip our parents equally because they're our partners at home, okay? So para po mas holistic yung ating distance learning approach, we equip our students, we equip ourselves, no, as teachers, and then we equip our parents as well para po direct. 2 p.m. pa rin po tayo, teachers, no? Sa whole March series po natin ay 2 p.m. So sana
Sir
po worth
Frankie,
it. Yes po, go ahead, Sir Javi.
actually, talagang encourage ko po lang kayo na na i-invite po yung mga magulang ninyo. Isang importanteng bagay po why that would be beneficial for you, kasi especially if they participate in the comment section, kayo rin po mismo makikita ninyo yung concerns ng mga magulang. Tapos on their end naman makikita nila yung concerns ng mga guro. Kasi baka lang hindi natin alam yung concerns ng isa't isa. We've always been assuming lang na ito yung iniisip nila, ito yung tumatakbo sa isip nila. Pero next week, baka naman for the first time magkarinigan tayo, 'di ba? Why not? So invite po ninyo yung parents ninyo.
Yan po, yon to. Teachers, maraming salamat, no. And again, please do invite your parents. Okay? So we'll see you again, teachers, on our second part, no, of our March series on March. That will be March 13. Tama ba ako? 13. Okay, March 13, 2 p.m. here at Kaagapay Teacher Support in our YouTube channel. So updates via our Facebook page po. No? Please do like and follow our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So maraming salamat, teachers, and have a nice afternoon po.